My name is Carl Areola. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Federal Emergency Management Agency. I work at Region 5. I'm the Disaster Emergency Communications Coordinator, or the DEC, for the Regional Emergency Coordination Center here at a Region 5. And I am also have the seat at the ESF2 chair in the Watch Office Response Center. I've been with Vimeo almost 2 years. Next month will be my 2 years. And my background is law enforcement, a state trooper from Florida, 20 years. And after that, I was with prior 14 years of Homeland Security and transitioned over to FEMA a couple of years ago. I'm Kilo Delta 9, Oscar Delta Hotel. I've been an amateur radio operator since 1994. Amateur radio is close to my heart. You can see some equipment to the over my shoulder. And I'm a shares operator, November Alpha 5 Kilo Alpha. And my shares beacon station, alert beacon station with CISA is November X-ray 5 X-ray Alpha. And our FEMA Region 5 call sign is Kilo Foxtrot 5 Echo Mike Alpha. I'm going to speak today about the after action report concerning Operation Frostbite. Our RECWIG is the second largest RECWIG in the country out of 10 regions. We have approximately just a little over 400 associates, participants, and members. We have almost 200 Oxcom amateur radio operators in the group on the roster. And Max Schneider is our Oxcom chair. I was successful in getting him nominated and validated as the chair for the Oxcom group in Region 5 last year, and he's been very instrumental. So you're going to see a lot of Max Schneider here in the upcoming months, hopefully. I know he has a presentation coming up for you on the Oxcom program here on March 24th. So without further ado, I'd like to explain that when I came aboard the RECWIG, we had about 82 members. And we have grown exponentially very rapidly in the last year and a half. And collectively coming together, we decided for the Regional Emergency Communications Coordinating Working Group, which is mandated by Congress after post-Katrina in 2008, Congress mandated that there'll be 10 working groups in FEMA. Going to take the working groups, you got telephone and Wi-Fi, and Oxcom involves the Civil Air Patrol Auxiliary, Civil Air Patrol itself, the Coast Guard Auxiliary itself, Air Force Mars, Army Mars, Amateur Radio, RACES, Civil Salvation Army, the Maritime Mobile Service Net, NEHF Amateur Frequencies. We also activate the 60-meter net on 5 megahertz, I believe on channel 4, every other Sunday. We activate that net, and then we have a DMR, Region 5 Oxcom DMR, talk group 31637. I have a DMR. I've got D-Star, got Yaesu Fusion. Do digital modes. I do CW about 15, 20 words a minute, and I love it. And every 2 weeks, we activate these nets, and amateur radio operators from all over the country can check in and participate in the nets. So having said that, the Regional Emergency Communication Coordination Working Group is all these folks. SWICs, the statewide interoperability communication directors of all the emergency management agencies in the states in Region 5 in the country. But within Region 5, we have Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. We work closely with the EMAs, the RACES operators, the shares operators, Mars operators, you name it. So as you know, in shares, we have federal agencies from GSA to FBI, Department of Justice, Department of Defense, Environmental Protection Agency, Homeland Security, FEMA, ourselves, and it's very active. I check into the nets very quite often. So having said that, and now that you understand what the RECWIG is, we come together for best practices and with the experience of the professionals, and they make decisions on what is best for states in the creation of not policies, but standard operating procedures standard operating guides that they create the follow from. Now, we have to be transparent when we do this. When we come together, there's no finger pointing and assumptions that your state has this state has that. Oh, I thought you had this technology, but you don't, or you have this technology, why aren't you using it? We decided as a RECWIG, what does a RECWIG want to do? If the volunteers, the professionals, I consider everybody a professional, because as an amateur radio operator, you have to go through some type of technical training to get accepted and licensed by the FCC. And you also have additional training to go through your ComL, ComT, your ICS courses, your NIMS courses, your basic courses, to be able to go out in the field and respond to a location, a shelter, a school, fire department, you name it, to participate, and even to pass messages in times of disaster. So the RECWIG said, let's do exercises together. Let's test our infrastructure on what we have. So transparency, the directors, the EMAs, I mean, we have people, response professionals, disaster response professionals, and response teams that are employed by Verizon Wireless, FirstNet, AT&T, and T-Mobile. And they go out and respond to the communities and to support our lines of efforts in the ESF2. Emergency Support Function 2 is disaster emergency communications. So if you Google emergency support functions in FEMA, there's approximately 17 of them, I believe, 15 or 17 of them. I just know I'm number 2. That's all I'm affiliated to. Okay, so the point is that we come together, and I'm the coordinator. I'm not the chair. I'm the coordinator to build relationships in the RECWIG. I'm constantly on the phone talking to amateurs, talking to government officials, talking to private industry, and making friendships. And we pass information back and forth. And one of the modes that we use in passing information is our Homeland Security Information Network website. Now, anyone on this call who's a member of good standing in the community, who's a member of good standing in the United States, citizen, has an amateur radio license, who's interested in being a member of the Region 5 RECWIG, please contact me. I can nominate and validate you personally. You'll have access. I'll put you on a roster. Our regional watch office every day sends an open source summary of significant information of the happenings in Region 5, and also nationally, and depending on the significance of national news. Right now with cybersecurity and working in partnerships with CISA, who's in the RECWIG, the emergency communication coordinators in the different states in CISA and also in the SHARES program are part of the RECWIG. So is the Red Cross and many other agencies. Every month, on the last Tuesday of the month at 10 a.m., we come together on Zoom Government, and we have a virtual call where we share information. We get the updates from directors of each state. What's going on? What are the trends? Then we talk about all the agencies in private industry, from FAA, TSA, because they have shares, and they have high frequency radios at the airports. We share information. The National Weather Service, GSA, FCC, NTIA. I can go on all the way to WinLink, because Steve Waterman comes on our monthly call, and he provides updates on what SHARES program and what WinLink is doing. And we share information, and we have a good time. This is the direction of FEMA and what they want to go, because they understand that we have to have a whole community approach. We need the professionals, we need the expertise of others to help come together to establish a common bond to how we can respond collectively together out in the field, boots on the ground, before, during, and after a disaster. So I'm going to talk to you right now about our after action report. And the REC said, let's do an exercise. So we kicked it off, and we said, okay, as I happen to be an organizational psychologist, but that's another story. We're not going to talk about psychology, because then I'll have to get a glass of bourbon and then help me relax. But that's okay. That's my medicine. When we talk about disaster emergency communications in the RECWIG, you have to effectively, when you do an exercise, you theoretically don't plan for it. Research dictates that if you're going to test something, you test with what you have now, then you correct what needs to be done, come together, have an after action report, and then have an improvement development plan, an IDP, specifically from all the elements, the findings and concerns that have been identified. And then when that is published or written or documented and determine what they are, then you identify critical items from that after action report, assign those different items to the managers of the organization, and delegate them responsibilities, how to development standard operating procedures and guides, and then share those guides amongst the RECWIG for recommendations, suggestions, and edits. And then that's going to be a best practice for others to follow. And this is the thing. If you have a theoretical idea, and I have an idea, and we physically do it in reality, and it works, good. You do it again, and it works, fantastic. Let's try it again. If it works again, outstanding. That theoretical becomes evidence-based practice because it worked, and there was more of a pattern to it. And because of the evidence-based practice, now it becomes best practice. Let's document it and give it as a guide for others to follow. In organizations, we happen to be emergency communications. So that's how we do it here in Region 5 RECWIG and other RECWIGs as well. So they said, let's do an exercise, and then let's do a tabletop exercise. So we collectively came together and said, okay, as this is going to be ESF2, what happens in Region 5? What happens in our region? Theoretically, it wouldn't be successful or reality to do a exercise of a hurricane, because in Region 5 states, a hurricane's not likely to come up to Illinois. If it does, it'll be a tropical depression. So we said, okay, in the Midwest, North Central Midwest, Region 5, we have ice storms. And when we have ice storms, ice builds up on power lines, power infrastructure, those cables and power lines fall down, power goes out, internet goes out, you name it. Then the highways, you have accidents, critical lines of effort for the critical infrastructure, hospitals, fire departments, airports, shelters, schools, okay? Telecommunications are going to be affected. So in reality, when you have an ice storm with significant snowfall and power outages, people don't receive the power, their homes are not going to be heated properly, and they may potentially have catastrophic concerns for health and welfare safety of our citizens, all the way down to the local community. So they said, okay, let's do Operation Frostbite. So it took us a couple of months to organize this, and several months to organize this, and we did measle development to have the injects, because we're going to test the infrastructure of our state partners, government agencies, and even at FEMA. So in March of last year, 2021, Operation Frostbite was a tabletop exercise. And because of COVID and the restrictions that were hindering us from meeting in person and doing this exercise, okay, we said, let's do it virtual. I mean, just because I'm standing in front of you physically and then being on a computer, there's some limitations, but it still can be accomplished. You can see me, you can hear me, you can see the presentation, and we have communication. So we said, let's maximize this and do it virtual. And we did tabletop exercise. For Operation Frostbite, we had 53 different agencies. We had over 100 participants on this call. And I need to say this very clearly, because CISA, Interoperability Technical Assistance Program, ICTAP, is a funded program that has been established by CISA, and they're the leader in the development of communications and protocols. They write the standard. I have a lot of respect for CISA. FEMA is the agency that responds to disasters. They respond before it's coming, while it's happening and after, we're still on boots on the ground doing our recovery efforts and mitigations from the response. So CISA does a lot of technical things, but because they have the ICTAP program, FEMA along with some of my colleagues, worked with CISA, Jim Jarvis in Region 5, John McLean, their supervisor, and James Stromberg. Wonderful gentlemen. They said they can bring the professionals and the facilitators to help organize this tabletop exercise the way it should be done. Academically, organizationally, it has a scientific method of the creation of injects, measles developments, execution, meetings, the initial planning meeting, the midterm planning meeting, the final meeting, the expectations, objectives, and goals, and the execution of the exercise. And we did it in March. 2-day exercise. Anybody involved in ESF2 was there, 53 agencies and 100 people. We had the National Weather Service come in and do a presentation. Stephanie Cipro with the National Weather Service, very instrumental, very professional, a woman, a great colleague with the FEMA. She's a member of the RECWIG. We told her, okay, let's do this. Forecast a hypothetical model, do a PowerPoint presentation for the group about a storm that's coming in through the Midwest. There's going to be heavy snow, a wintry mix of ice and rain in some areas because, Southern Illinois is not going to be as cold as Northern Minnesota. So there's going to be substantial mix of ice and snow and more snow and a little bit of rain and high winds. Mix that together, you got Operation Frostbite, tabletop exercise. As a result of the exercise, some lessons were learned because we threw injects. So one of the injects there said, okay, in Minnesota, they have a statewide armor system. They have WISCOM in Wisconsin, and they got STARCOM in Illinois, and they got MARCS in Ohio. And so they were coordinating in simulation, talking with the different folks about the response efforts. We threw injects saying, okay, in the northern part of Minnesota, the armor system just went down. You lost 7 towers. What do you do? High frequency operators came in. We know I had Oxcom involved with Max Schneider, and we said, okay, propagation is poor because of the low ceiling and different effects of it. So as the exercise continued, we threw injects of transportation infrastructure on I-80 that goes the interstate goes east and west south of near Gary, Indiana, one of the main arteries between the east and west portions of northern Indiana and Illinois, and the corridor of Interstate 94, I-43 going up north to serve Canada, Minneapolis, and points north. Suffered a lot of icing. Transportation and our communications responses for that had an accident to deal with. Well, medevac and helicopters, forget it. Low ceiling, visibility is low. You pick up the phone to call medevac during poor visibility and communications, and the pilots are going to laugh, saying, "Sorry, we can't go. We can't go. No go. We're not going. I know we're instrument flight rules. We're capable of flying, but no. With the icing, rime ice or mixed ice, it's dangerous." So the response efforts and some rescues in different locations were down. But the Oxcom component was very successful, interesting, because the amateur radio operators that were out there were passing traffic on weather information, what they've been hearing in different locations for situational awareness, was sending that information through WindLink and through shares and their methods and Telnet, things like that. And we were sharing information with the various emergency operations centers. We had counties involved. Remember, we had over 53 agencies. We had many counties in Michigan. We had many counties in Indiana, some municipalities in Illinois. And I owe you an apology because before I came to do this presentation, talk about emergency support function 2 and technical interruptions, especially for me, the DEC and FEMA, I fired up my government computer for some updates, and unfortunately, it won't be able to get in for a little bit, but my presentation was on and I apologize, but I'm going to do my best to describe what occurred by memory. So after the second day, we decided, okay, let's gather our thoughts and we'll hold a after action plan. Through the course of the couple following months, there was an after action report that's almost 100 pages long, ladies and gentlemen. CISA CTAP facilitators that are contractors with CISA, these facilitators are very professional and they know exactly what they're doing. They do this for a living. They do simulated exercises, tabletop exercises with the Army, with the Navy, with the Coast Guard, Department of Justice, FBI, other agencies regarding their response efforts. Here in FEMA, we did a disaster emergency communications exercise based on a simulation of terrible wintry weather affecting the communications infrastructure, and we're going to test it theoretically. And how you test it is you throw injects and measles. When we threw those injects and made those decisions to create these items, only the managing planners were involved in that process. The players didn't know what we were planning for them. So it was very interesting. The lessons learned, good question. Measles is MESL. That's mission. I can't think of it right now. It'll come up. If you can do me a favor, Steve, I should know this. Measles, MESL, Google that really quick and you can type it in the chat. It's a master scenario.
Google what?
Yes, sir. Steve.
Google
yes, sir.
what?
There you go. Hey, Google's the best thing, right? It's through Amazon. And let me tell you something else about Amazon, ladies and gentlemen. Amazon.com Corporation or Incorporated have a contract with Homeland Security. They're the backbone of the regional message servers for RMS and shares the system and in WinLink. Master scenario event list. Thank you very much. MSEL. So in that 100-page report and after action report, we learned so many different things that 18 items of interest were captured by the management team and by leadership from various states and organizations, including private industry. And they said some of the items that we thought were in place regarding satellite phones, the assumptions of a county or an agency or a state may have them, well, certainly wasn't there because it was brought up. But when they said we don't have those or have access, that became a concern during exercise. We have to be transparent and we can't do any finger pointing. We're going to learn together from this. So out of the 18 items, 8 critical items were discovered. So for the RECWIG, we have 10 subcommittees. We have the OXCOM, LTE broadband, cross-border interoperability committee. We have the standard operating procedure committee. We have the training exercise committee. We have the IPAWS committee. We have OXCOM committee. We have the Web EOC. The Web EOC is a computer-based technology platform that provides the states to communicate with each other on a web-based program called Emergency Operations Center. And it's a proprietary program that they use to communicate when they're doing their coordinations by a platform involving a multitude of things that they can put into it to share information in real time. FEMA has Web EOC, but it's a different version. It's FEMA's version. And FEMA from headquarters to all the regions, the watch offices, regional response centers are capable of using that platform. The names are the same, but for FEMA in the States, it's different. In the exercise, there was lessons learned about the EMAC process, the Emergency Management, EMAC, Emergency Management Assistance Compact. That's where different states have caches of equipment ranging from handheld radios, interoperability radios, VHF, UHF, multi-dual band, 700, 800 megahertz, Motorola XTS 5000s, XTS 8000s, you name it. Mobile radios, they have high frequency radios, portable generators, antennas, trailers called cows, cellular on wheels, to ITEX trailers that were a lot of counties and a lot of agencies acquired Homeland Security funding after 9/11, and they went out and had contractors manufacture and tailor modified motorhomes into offices, tractor trailers into mobile command posts, command and control with satellite dishes, all the comms you can think of. I mean, if you're into radios like I am, you think you're in Star Trek, and they're like Red October vehicles. Really incredible. So in the EMAC process, the states learn, thank you for that. And for example, Ohio, if they needed resources for response, they can put an EMAC request through this procedure, and it can take anywhere from 24 hours to 72 hours for approval. And another state and the union that could have what they want can have assets on the way, with personnel transporting this products to what they need and where it needs to be, and it can be tailored to exactly what it can be. Satellite phones, satellite dishes, UAVs, you name it, involving even the Civil Air Patrol putting a repeater in the tail of the airplane behind the pilot and flying 10,000 feet in circles for hours, and being able to have a repeater that could augment the communications on the field with a person's boots on the ground in their response efforts. So the 8 critical items that we found were, okay, we need to develop a standard operation guide for satellite phones. The agencies who have them, whether they're private industry or government or federal government, the issuance of the phones, the type of the phone, how it's going to be maintained, how the batteries are going to be checked for continuity through a battery analyzer. If a battery analyzer determines a battery is 80% or less, get rid of the battery, restore it, get another battery. Continuity checks. Who's going to have the phones? How are they going to keep track of the roster? Who's going to make the phone calls each month to do satellite checks? Who's going to do the upgrades, the maintenance, and things like that? Then also involved was the shares program. What's really interesting is that primary and secondary communications. Primary, as we know, is, a lot of people okay, here's our cell phone. Okay, that's good. But then some phones on a desk in the office is an internet phone, voice over internet protocol technology. But what happens is that interface is not with the server, where it's got the 4 copper wires, and you have the internet through the switch at the server, wherever it's located. If it doesn't have that capability, people pick up the phone at their desk or where they're working in operations for response, and the phone's not working. Well, it's because it's internet based. There's a lot of variables and discussions about how things could be changed for the better. So primary communications that we know are right now is the internet, cell phones, and radios tied to repeaters interface with the internet. But what happened is that, I've been a ham since 1994. I was in the Highway Patrol in 1986. I responded to a lot of hurricanes in South Florida. I don't know everything, but what I've done in my research has determined this. When technology hit and the internet became popular in the late 80s, then it caught on in the 90s, and Amazon, things like that, internet technology skyrocketed. And when it skyrocketed, it took land mobile radio, public safety communications, the PSAPs, the 911 centers, mobile data terminals and police cars and law enforcement, mobile data terminals and fire engines. You see, you stop at a traffic light, you see a fire truck or an ambulance, they got a computer mounted at the dashboard. Well, it's linked through RF and data communications through repeaters and through the system. And we're learning that, especially right now, in Region 5, we're concerned with two things, and the nation right now is concerned with the same thing. If we lose the internet, it's going to be an interruption and a disruption to services. If we have an earthquake with the New Madras zone and the Wabash zone, if you go to GIS website and look at the images of Wabash and New Madrid, you'll see red circles on the map. Look at the red circles that are in the Midwest compared to ones in California. It's disturbing, but we just don't know when it's going to happen. So the thing is that with internet technology and learning that the infrastructure could be compromised greatly. For example, it's been in the media, it's public information. If there's some threats to the VSATs satellites, they do credit card transactions, final transactions. You go to McDonald's to buy a hamburger, your transactions going through the VSAT. Many maritime, oceanic navigation and major shipping lanes use VSATs for economic of external export and import of a lot of cargo, a lot of commodities in the world. If the VSAT's interrupted, it's going to interrupt a little bit, but there's plenty of them out there. I'm not saying it's going to go down anyway, but it's going to be a concern. So internet interruption is a concern right now. And what I mean by that is high frequency radio is coming back. There's going to be more interest at the fundamentals of high frequency communications with the additional complement, I'm just saying additional complement of the ability to send email and messaging through the redundancy of various servers and other servers like Starlink. You know, Starlink is very good, supported very well. It's very effective. It's proven itself in the 2020 Oregon wildfires and the major tornadic activity that occurred not too long ago in Kentucky. So what I'm saying is that as amateur radio operators, we're hearing a call learning that high frequency communications is having a comeback. The traditional ability of voice communications, propagation changes, NTIA, FCC, and spectrum managers have come together and said, okay, propagation changes, so does a frequency matrix. As a customary rule of law through science, in the daytime, the higher the frequency, 10 meters, okay, 30 meters, 15 meters. At nighttime, you got 160, you got 40 meters, 60 meters, but it's fundamental. And we're seeing a trend where it's coming back. And that's was determined with the after action report. I know it's about 8:51. Do I have any questions so far? Did a lot of talking, been a lot of layout here, but any questions from anybody on the, if someone can relay the text. I can't see the chat room. They pop up and go, but if someone can relay that for me.
Barry, go ahead and read the text you want.
Yeah, the significant questions, the most popular, or that you
There's
think that,
lots and lots and lots of good comments. Let's say, okay, Stephen KK6ZJC says, the question I have is when the government decides that they need HF communications, what becomes of our bands? Will the government decide that FEMA and DHS is more important than amateurs assisting them?
I can tell you what would happen now. God forbid if something happened tonight, the shares would be activated. The 60-meter net would be activated. People hire me will probably recommend that the auxiliary communications be activated. Coast Guard, Civil Air Patrol. The Coast Guard can augment high frequency communications interoperability, and so can the Air Force Mars and Army Mars and shares, Salvation Army Net. So what happens is that when shares becomes activated, those nets and those particular frequencies are utilized for shares. Yes, the government can use those frequencies depending on the criteria and the urgency, just as military can take some frequencies from Mars and allocate them for their use depending on the urgency and what frequency and whatnot. The frequencies are there, and they're coordinated effectively for different operations and propagation. But if something truly happened at a magnitude, that involved the whole country, there would be coordination. There would probably be a little bit of juggling of chainsaws and alligators, but it would ultimately come together and have a method. Now, when we come to amateur radio frequencies, we do have frequencies that by the 501c nonprofit organizations, and I'll say example, the Maritime Mobile Service Network on 14.300 upper sideband provide a service virtually almost 24 hours a day. And as a rule of thumb, and through publications and internet, hams know not to go there or go near the frequency and cause intermod or bleed over, depending on if they're using their amplifiers and where they're located. But other hams don't know that. So there's going to be some structure. I'm sure that ARRL and some other organizations will step in for organization on the amateur frequencies. I got to tell you, I'm sure it's going to be noisy. It's going to be chaos, and it's going to be very active. But that's what to answer your question, there is a structure already for those government frequencies and those organizations already. They do exercises for this, just like FEMA does. But the HF is going to be very active.
Okay, and Steve is giving us a propagation link for people. The HF propagation is way up. So yes, propagation is probably going to be a lot better than it's been. And that's
Yes.
all the basic questions. There's lots of good commentary.
Thank
Liz
you.
got his hand up, the VE3 CBG on Canada.
Hello, Canada, our neighbor. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, good evening, Carl. How are you tonight?
Good, good. Yes, how can I help you?
Just curious, we are surrounded by Section 5 where I live in London, Ontario. Is there a way of us getting involved in that situation? Because we would be involved just in whatever situation there might be. There's a possibility that we could be involved with weather or whatever to give the information back to you on the situation. Is that a possibility?
Common sense says yes, and I'm sure it would be based on my knowledge. I've been here 2 years and I've shared information with the VE call signs and the Canadian call signs that have the agreement between Canada and the United States on the amateur bands. Absolutely. I'm sure it would be accepted, and I applaud you for answering that question. I would start reaching out to your local agencies. I'm not too sure about Canada. Start making phone calls and looking with your colleagues in the direction that needs to go and answer the very same question you answered me. If something happened, I'm a resource. I'm a volunteer. I've got a call sign issued by Canada. I got the equipment. How can I help? And there may be some resources that you and I are not available that haven't been announced or even opened up out of Pandora's box until something happens. But I would do that.
Okay, I'm just an hour away from the border, from Port here in Michigan.
Yes.
Okay, so we're only an hour away, and I mean, as far as getting any information that would help you on the other side of the border, we'd be more than we'd love to do it for it, because we're part of that sort of in that same line of traffic, especially when you've got Ontario and you've got Ohio, Michigan, New York State. We're sort of in the cradle there. And I'm only, like I say, I'm only an hour away from the border. So if there's any way we could be involved to help you, to do whatever we could to sort of assist in whatever way is possible, I'd be more than willing to do that, because it's my section of Ontario that I look after. I've been put in I'm sort of they call it the section emergency, they call it the section manager Ontario South. So I have a whole section of Ontario South that I have to look after, which would be, I'm hoping, would be able to assist you in whatever situation you got in. But I'll just shut it off at that. But I just wanted you to know that if we could do anything for you, and I have, excuse me, I have your call sign, so you may get an email from me asking questions at some time.
Yeah, not a problem. I'm making relationships constantly. I do call you back and I do respond to you. I'm not an 8 to 5 person. Uh, I work at night. I work on the weekends. Just me and my wife. My kids are grown up, but my wife does not mind hearing CW in the background or static coming from this third bedroom upstairs. Her father was an extra, and he loved amateur radio. Fortunately, he passed away with cancer, and she knows how much amateur radio is to me. So I go in here and I go on a Triple H net at 1 a.m, trying to make international contacts. But anyway, yes. For those on the call, my call sign is Kilo Delta 9, Oscar Delta Hotel, KD9 ODH. Look me up in QRZ. My information's there. My FEMA email address is there as well. Shoot me an email. And even though you're in Canada, excuse me, I apologize. Even though you're in Canada and with the other folks on the call listening, can be a big help here in Region 5, and I'll tell you why. If there is something that goes on in Region 5, or if something goes on in Region 2, Region 3, Region 4, or other regions in the country, and you're able to hear traffic that needs to be passed and relayed because of propagation, you're a great asset, because that signal that's being sent from California to Nevada could be going from California right over Nevada's head because of they're too close for propagation, or the frequency their mode are using, or a number of factors. The takeoff angle of their G5 RV antenna, the takeoff angle of their Yagi antenna, the takeoff angle of an end-fed dipole, their takeoff angle of a long wire, random long wire. So if you're in Canada or New York or in Florida and you're listening and monitoring, and you hear traffic that nobody else is hearing, if you can hear it, chances are you might be able to talk back. You don't need 100 watts. I mean, we got people using QRP in our RecWig, and it's fine. It gets the job done. And the thing about it is, I don't care if what kind of radio you have, whether it's a 2022 Jaguar or a Toyota 4Runner from 1990. Radio is a radio. If I'm listening and I can hear you, it doesn't tell me what style of radio amplifier you got. If I can hear you 5x5 or 4x4, and you get the message across, whether it's digital on MT63 Olivia or FL Digi or Pactor or whatever mode, or CW, you know what? It's priceless. And that's how we help each other. So when I hear other ham says, "What can I do?" Not in your situation in Canada. I didn't mean it that way, but they said, "What can I do? I live in New Mexico." You could assist by exchanging and passing information that somebody else can't hear because of propagation.
Okay, thanks, Carl. I appreciate that. I have to go. It's been a pleasure meeting you, and I will be in touch. And fellas, everybody take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next week.
Okay,
Thanks again. Appreciate that.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
sorry, please, Brett.
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go on.
So the RecWig, the Regional Emergency Communication Coordination Working Group that meets together, we meet every Tuesday, the last Tuesday of each month at 10 a.m. And we have an hour meeting. And like I explained, if you'd like to join a RecWig or jump in on a virtual meeting, as long as I have your email, I'll send you an invite on Zoom Government. Pop in. There's a lot of professionals on the call. We discuss updates that happen around in a region, and we also discuss things that happen in other regions. Now, also, as a rostered member of the Oxcom, if Region 10, Laura Goodrew, my counterpart, working with her group, has an exercise, Cascadia Rising, or something occurring in Alaska on an exercise on 60 meters, she does, I send an invite for situational awareness to the group in Region 5 that can log in on their nets and listen in and participate. So there's no restriction there. So as we come together to do these things with the RecWig and have the camaraderie and the ability to communicate with each other and share information from different professionals, all walks of life, it's incredible. We learn from each other, and that's what it's about. And We have members in Jamaica. We have members in Haiti. We have members in Puerto Rico, St. Thomas, Virgin Islands, Hawaii, Guam, Saipan, because that's region 9, and HF and Oxcom is coming back. So, any other questions?
Barry, what you got in text?
There's one that's not related. It appears that FEMA retired the ESF courses. Are there, or will there be a replacement course or courses?
Somebody can help me. The audio wasn't good. Does Region 4 have a record? Yes. Donnie Monet is my counterpart. There's 10 decks. I'm the disaster emergency communication coordinator. I'm the deck for Region 5. There's 10 decks. Donnie Monet and Joe Robichaud are in Region 4, and great people. Joe, she's a ham. They do have a rec wig. Send me your information. Kilo Delta 9, Oscar Delta Hotel on QRZ. I will happy to introduce you virtually by email to Donnie, and they would love to have you in Region 4. Any other callers on the call as well, I'll be happy to refer you to the respective regions of your residence and location. Steve Waterman. Yes, Steve, I'm sorry. I had a senior moment. Forgive me, young man. Steve Waterman on a call. K4CJX, he's the Oxcom chair, Region 4. He happens to be on a call. Thank you, Steve. Any other questions?
Barry, got anything more for us?
Nope, that's anything that I can see.
I don't see any hands up. Carl, I have a comment.
Oscar has his hand up.
Oh, Oscar, go ahead.
Thank you, Dan and Carl. Thank you for your real nice presentation. How can we get into one of those drills nationwide? Something that can be included everyone in kind of disaster. I have some ideas, but I would let the professional do it so we can participate, including the Caribbean and so on.
Very good question. So your question is that as a resource in communications on the civilian side, if there is a disaster, how you can be incorporated on a call list or some type of roster for activation?
It could be that, or even participate on the drills. So we develop the networking and so on, because it's really important. We are so, let's say, isolated, being in an island 1,000 miles away from the main land, that we should be included on that.
Okay, you're in Puerto Rico, Oscar, right?
That is correct.
Okay, Region 2 is our sister backup region. So what I'm saying is that if we need additional resources, Region 2 would come to Region 5 to help us and vice versa. So New York, New Jersey, and Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, St. Thomas and St. John are Region 2. So send me your, Oscar, I apologize, I don't have your email offhand, but send me an email. I will put you in touch with Josh Green, credible guy. Dave Cucci, you'll meet these people, and David Crane. Great guys in the decks in Region 2. They're very knowledgeable. They also are hams, and I will put you in touch to be part of their group. And once you talk and collaborate with them, and they iron out the details on the sideline on the call and get your information, I'm sure they can do something for you. And I will refer you to them and copy you by email. Go ahead.
Right. Thank you, Carl. We'll do that.
Yeah, Region 2 is Puerto Rico. In fact, since I back up Region 2, I'm expected, God forbid, anything happens in Region 2 with a hurricane or any other natural disaster or man-made disaster for that fact, where FEMA has to go, I'm on a call out to support Region 2 staff in the decks there. So if I ever get to Puerto Rico, I'm going to look you up, Oscar.
Please do.
Yeah. I'll look you up, and we can have some cigars and some bourbon.
Yeah, you have bourbon and hamburgers.
There you go.
And ice cream.
There you
And
go.
ice cream.
Okay, and I'll bring my DMR radio, all my amateur equipment, and we'll be able to have a good time. And I'll let you meet the folks there. Anybody else?
Okay, with that little tidbit, I'm gonna turn this off, say goodnight to everybody. And
Good night,
see you next
7-3.
go-around.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you for having me.